Settle in now. Find a comfortable place where you can rest, letting your shoulders sink into the surface beneath you. The world outside can wait. For the next while, we will walk together into the quiet corridors of the past. Picture a grey sky, its clouds hanging low over rolling hills. In the distance, a fortress rises, its towers reaching upward, its walls a patchwork of weathered stone. This is not the fairy tale castle of painted storybooks. There are no gleaming white walls, no perfect symmetry. This is a working fortress, part home, part symbol of power, part shield against the dangers of a restless world. You draw closer along a dirt track, the air damp from an earlier rain. The wind carries the scent of wet earth and wood smoke. As you near the gates, you notice the thickness of the walls. Massive layers of stone, built to keep enemies out, and the Lord's authority in the drawbridge is lowered across a still, dark moat. Water laps softly at the edges, rippling where a duck glides past. Inside, the sounds are muted. The loudest is the steady clop of a cartwheel on cobblestone, the bray of a donkey somewhere out of sight. The air is cool here, shaded by the tall inner walls. It feels self-contained, its own little world. This is where we will stay for a while. In the stone heart of the medieval world, we will explore its routines and its silences. We will see its hardship and its comfort. We will step into the role of those who lived and worked here, the servants, the defenders, the unseen builders of its daily life. We will also glimpse those who commanded from above, their existence marked by ceremony and careful display. We will begin with the most ordinary, yet in many ways most unrelenting life in the castle, the servant's day. Then we will shift to a moment of strain and siege, when a castle became not just a home but a last refuge. From there, we will wander into the secret spaces, the hidden stone veins that run beneath these walls, and finally, we will lift our gaze to the high tables and private chambers of the Lord and Lady. For now, breathe slowly. Feel the present fade back, step by step, as we pass beneath the castle gate. The years peel away like layers of mist, until we stand in the narrow lanes of the medieval courtyard, where the day is just beginning. Why you wouldn't last a day in a medieval castle. The first light of dawn has barely touched the sky when you are woken. Not by choice, but by duty. Your sleeping space is simple. A narrow pallet of straw, flattened and uneven from months of use, set close to others in the low chamber beneath the great hall. The air here is chill, heavy with the mingled scents of damp stone, wool blankets, and the faint ashiness from the fires banked overnight above. You sit up, pulling the rough wool over your shoulders for a moment before bracing yourself for the cold. The walls here are bare, their stones slick in the corners where moisture gathers. A candle flickers near the door, casting a small, unsteady glow that makes the shadows stretch long. Your work begins before the sun itself has cleared the horizon. The castle is quieter than it will be for the rest of the day, but already there are faint sounds. The distant creak of a stable door. The muffled footsteps of another servant starting their tasks. The first duty is water. You step out into the courtyard, where the air is damp. The flagstones still slick from last night's drizzle. The sky is pale, streaked with the first thin light. The well stands near the center, its stone lip worn smooth from years of rope dragging over it. You lower the bucket hand over hand, the rope rough against your skin, until you hear the splash far below. Pulling it up, you feel the weight drag heavily, making your shoulders ache before the day has even truly begun. This water is for the kitchens, where the first hearth is being coaxed back to life. The great iron cauldron waits to be filled, its blackened sides warm only near the bottom where embers glow. The air in the kitchen is thicker than outside. It smells of yesterday's pottage, a stew of barley, beans, and a few scraps of salted meat. The cook stirs slowly, the wooden spoon scraping against the pot in a steady rhythm. From here, the tasks come one after another. Floors must be swept, though the rushes that cover the great hall are never truly clean. These are bundles of dried reeds and grasses laid down to soften the stone underfoot. In theory, they are replaced several times a year, but more often they remain much longer, gathering crumbs from every meal, dust from every boot, and the faint smell of ale from every spilled cup. You sweep the loose debris into piles, the bristles of your broom catching on the uneven stones beneath. There are ashes to remove from the hearths, heavy buckets of them to be carried outside and emptied away from the main paths. The fine grey dust clings to your sleeves and settles in your hair. Your hands are already rough from work, the skin dry from the constant handling of wood, rope, and stone. The hours pass in a steady rhythm, water to fetch, fires to feed, benches to wipe, clothing to mend. The laundry is one of the heavier tasks. Great bundles of linens carried to the washing area, boiled in large cauldrons over open flames, stirred with long wooden paddles. The steam curls upward, dampening your hair and clothes, while the heat reddens your cheeks. Clean or not, the smell of smoke and soap will cling to you for the rest of the day. Meals for you are brief and plain. A thick slice of bread, still coarse with bits of husk, dipped into a wooden bowl of stew, mostly vegetables. Perhaps a sliver of meat if the pot has yielded one today. You eat standing or sitting on a low stool near the kitchen door. There is no lingering. As soon as the last bite is swallowed, there is more to be done. By afternoon, the great hall must be set for the evening meal. The long trestle tables are assembled, the benches are lined, the Lord's high table placed upon its dais. Candles and torches are made ready, though they will not be lit until the light fades. The smell of roasting meat begins to drift from the kitchens, though you know none of it will reach your plate. As night settles, your body is weary. The castle above grows louder as the nobility dine, the echoes of laughter and music drifting down from the great hall. You finish your last duties in the dim light, stacking firewood for the morning, sweeping the final scraps from the floor. When at last you return to your pallet, the wool blanket is cool to the touch. The murmur of voices fades as sleep claims you, but it will be brief. Dawn comes early, and the cycle will begin again. The siege of Château Galliard, 1204, leaving behind the quiet routine of castle life. Let us travel to a moment when the castle's walls were more than boundaries of work and home, when they were the last defense between life and defeat. It is the winter of 1203 in Normandy. The fortress of Château Galliard rises proudly on its limestone outcrop above the river Seine. The cold air is crisp, carrying with it the faint tang of water from the river far below. The land here is quiet, except for the wind that sweeps along the hilltop, brushing against the walls. This castle was built by King Richard the Lionheart, constructed with astonishing speed, less than 2 years from start to finish, a feat that left even seasoned masons and engineers astonished. It was his jewel, his statement of strength, its walls gleaming white in the sun when newly set. But Richard is gone now, and the castle stands under the rule of his brother, King John of England. Across the river, an army gathers, the forces of King Philip II of France. Inside the walls, the garrison is on alert. The Manhatams walk the parapets, their cloaks pulled tightly against the cold. The great gates are closed, the drawbridge raised, and the storerooms inspected. You can imagine the quiet determination in those early days of the siege. barrels of salted fish and meat carefully stacked, sacks of grain counted and placed where they are easy to reach. Every candle, every bundle of firewood is accounted for. From the battlements, the enemy camp is visible. A sprawl of tents, campfires glowing at night like a scattered chain of embers. In the daytime, you can see the movement of men and horses, hear the faint clank of armor, the occasional blast of a horn. The first weeks pass with exchanges of missile fire. The French bring forward great wooden siege engines, mangonels and trebuchets that hurl stones against the walls. The sound is deep and resonant, each impact sending a dull shiver through the stone beneath your feet. Yet the castle holds. The walls, thick and carefully angled, deflect much of the force. But Philip's men are patient. They do not rely solely on brute force. They cut off supply lines, stationing watchful troops along the river and the surrounding countryside. No merchant caravan is allowed through. No messenger leaves without risking capture. Inside the castle, life begins to narrow. Bread becomes harder, more coarse. The flour stretched with ground beans or whatever can be found. Meat is rare, and the salt that once preserved it begins to taste overwhelming. The water remains cold and clean from the castle's cisterns, but it cannot wash away the constant hunger. By February, the French find a weakness. Beneath one section of the outer wall, they dig, removing earth and stone until a part of the wall gives way. The collapse is not dramatic, more a sudden yielding, a section crumbling into rubble. The defenders retreat, closing the gates to the inner bailey. Now they are pressed into a smaller space, their movements more restricted. In the last weeks, hunger becomes the truest enemy. The once steady pace of guard rotations slows. Men linger by the fires to conserve their strength. The air grows colder, the wind finds its way through cracks in the shutters, and each step on the flagstones echoes in the emptier halls. When the end comes in March 1204, it does so without the crash of a final assault. The defenders, thin and weary, yield the fortress. Philip's men enter, their banners snapping in the cold wind. Today, Chateau Galliard is a ruin. The outer walls are broken, grass grows where soldiers once marched, and the wind moves freely through empty windows. Yet the sense of endurance remains. If you stand there in the early morning, you may feel the weight of that winter, the quiet persistence of those who waited for relief that never came. The secret passages of medieval castles with the siege behind us, let us walk the castle corridors in search of something less visible, yet no less important. The hidden ways that ran through stone and shadow. Medieval castles were not only fortresses, they were also puzzles of stonework, with passages built for movement unseen. Some were purely practical, meant for servants to travel without disturbing the Lord's guests. Others were born of necessity in times of danger. Escape routes carved into bedrock, narrow enough that you must turn sideways to pass. Imagine standing in a quiet hall. The torches flicker, their light catching on the uneven surface of the walls. To your right, there is what seems to be an ordinary wooden panel, dark with age. But if you were to press at the right spot, the panel would shift, swinging inward on a concealed hinge. Behind it, a narrow stair curves steeply downward into darkness. The air here is cooler, untouched by the warmth of the fire above. These passages were deliberately plain. No ornament, no wasted space. The steps might be uneven, carved quickly from the stone, their edges worn smooth by centuries of cautious feet. In some castles, such stairs led to small postern gates, doors in the outer wall, hidden from direct view, allowing a rider to slip out into the countryside under the cover of night. Some passages were more elaborate. In places like Warwick Castle in England, Archaeologists have uncovered routes that linked the Great Hall to chambers in the towers, allowing guards to move without being seen. In certain fortresses, there were even sallyports, small, heavily defended exits through which a sudden counterattack could be launched. Then there were the rumor-born legends. Whispers of tunnels stretching for miles, linking castle to monastery, or castle to the village below. Few of these have ever been proven, but the idea persisted, perhaps because it appealed to both the hope of escape and the lure of hidden knowledge. The truth is often less dramatic, yet no less fascinating. Many so-called secret passages may have simply been storage cellars, their entrances later forgotten as walls were rebuilt. Others were servants' stairs, meant to keep the quiet work of the household invisible. In a place where ceremony mattered as much as defense, appearances were carefully managed, the Lord's meal appearing in the hall, as if by magic, while in reality an army of cooks and servers moved through cramped backstairs and stone corridors. Excavations sometimes reveal these routes unexpectedly. Beneath the ruins of Chepstow Castle, for example, archaeologists uncovered a narrow chamber between two walls, a hidden guard station, with loopholes looking out onto what is now an empty courtyard. The space was tight, the ceiling low. You can imagine a guard standing there for hours, unseen by anyone outside, watching for a sign of trouble. Today, many castles allow visitors to walk these passages. You can feel the shift in atmosphere the moment you step inside. The air still, the sound of your footsteps hushed. The walls close in, the light narrows to a single direction, and you are walking in the same confined space where countless others once moved with urgency. Secrecy, or simply the rhythm of daily duty. The presence of these passages reminds us that castles were more than just walls. They were systems, alive with movement. Seen from above, they may have seemed imposing but static. From within, they were a constant interplay of open space and hidden ways, a place where the obvious was only half the story. A day in the life of a medieval lord now. Let us step away from the narrow, shadowed passages and into the wide, sunlit chambers reserved for the castle's highest rank, the lord of the estate. If you were such a figure, your day would begin, not in haste, but in a measured series of routines. Your bed is a high, heavy structure of carved wood, set against the thickest wall to avoid drafts. The mattress is stuffed with feathers rather than straw, and the covers are of wool or fur, depending on the season. A servant would arrive quietly to stir the fire in your chamber, so that the morning air does not bite too sharply when you rise. Breakfast, though modest by modern standards, is brought to you rather than taken in the hall. Bread still warm from the oven, cheese from the dairy, perhaps a bit of preserved meat. You eat at a small table near the hearth, while discussing the day's business with your steward. The great hall awaits you next. Here, light filters in from tall, narrow windows, softened by the colored glass set into them. Your seat is at the high table, placed on a raised dais, so that you overlook the rest of the room. Beneath you, benches are filled with those who serve the household directly, officers, clerks, and lesser knights. In the morning hours, you hear petitions. A tenant farmer may request relief from a tax after a poor harvest. A visiting merchant may seek permission to hold a market in the nearby village. Disputes between neighbors are brought forward, and you, or an appointed official, listen with a careful expression, weighing the details before making judgment. By midday, you may take a meal in the hall with your family and most trusted retainers. This is not the grand feast of imagination, but a structured affair. Courses of pottage, roasted meats, and bread, served in order and eaten in near silence, except for the murmur of necessary conversation. The afternoon is reserved for matters of estate. You might walk along the castle's walls with your captain of the guard, noting repairs to be made, or watching a group of archers practice in the outer yard. Or you may retreat to a private chamber, where clerks lay out rolls of parchment, tallies of grain stores, lists of rents owed, letters received from distant allies. Your seal is set in wax more than once during the day, each time marking an order or confirmation of rights. Entertainment, when it comes, is subdued. A musician may play a lute or harp in the chamber after the evening meal. You might listen to a recitation of a romance or a chronicle of past battles. Candles burn slowly in iron holders, the flames steady in the still air. The stone walls around you hold the warmth of the day's fires, but the night air presses coolly at the shutters. When the time comes to retire, you pass again through the halls, now quieter, the rushes on the floor darkened with the day's use. Servants have banked the fires, and the castle settles into its nighttime rhythm. The measured tread of guards on the wall walk, the occasional bark of a dog in the courtyard, and the deep, slow breathing of a place at rest. It is a life of authority, yes, but also of ritual. The hours are shaped by the needs of the land, the demands of those who depend on you, and the steady heartbeat of the castle itself, a rhythm that endures from one generation to the next, returning from the past. And so, our walk through the castle draws to a close. We have felt the weight of its stone walls, the chill of its draughty halls, and the quiet hum of life that filled every corner, from the smoky kitchens below to the high-ceilinged chambers above. We began in the heart of daily labor, among the servants and workers whose lives were measured by bells and burden. We stood with them at dawn, smelled the bread baking, felt the ache in our backs as the hours stretched long. We watched a siege unfold, not in the sudden crash of battle, but in the slow constriction of days without relief. We saw how each drop of water, each handful of grain, became a decision that weighed upon everyone within the walls. We wandered the hidden routes, the narrow stairways, the shadowed corridors, the forgotten doors that told their own quiet story of movement and secrecy. And then we stepped into the life of the Lord, with its formality and privilege, but also its own patterns of duty and watchfulness. The castle, for all its grandeur, was not a place of ease. It was a machine for survival, for ceremony, and for the steady exercise of control over the land beyond its walls. Those who lived here carried the constant presence of responsibility, danger, and tradition, whether they were the humblest servant or the Lord himself. Now, as we leave its gates behind, imagine the stillness of the countryside at night. The torches on the wall flicker faintly in the distance. The sound of the drawbridge chain fades into the quiet, replaced by the slow sigh of wind through the trees. The air is cooler now, the stars clear above, and the world feels softer than the hard, echoing stone we have just left. In this moment, you can appreciate the comfort of your own time. The walls around you warm, the floor beneath you steady and clean, the night free of the watchman's call or the distant creak of the portcullis. You may drift now, letting the images of the past blur and fade, the way torchlight dissolves into shadow. The castle remains behind us, its halls empty once more, its secrets tucked away beneath layers of stone and centuries of silence. And somewhere inside, in a chamber you will never see, a fire burns low, as it has done for countless nights before.